is the Senate impeachment trial. It is the last day for House impeachment managers to make their case against President Trump. Today's arguments are expected to focus on the second article of impeachment, and that is obstruction of Congress. Democrats tackled abuse of power yesterday. Watch.
It puts even President Nixon to shame. President Trump has placed his own personal political interests first. He has placed them above our national security, above our free and fair elections, and above our system of checks and balances. This conduct is not America first. It is Donald Trump first.
If right doesn't matter, we're lost. You can't trust this president do what's right for this country.
Joining me right now is Senate Republican Conference Chairman and Senate Foreign Relations Committee member John Barrasso. And it is great to see you, Senator. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Maria.
Take us behind the curtain, sir. What went on?
Well, first you said you can't, Adam Schiff just said you can't trust the president to do what's right for the country. Maria, look at the economy. It is booming under President Trump. The stock market is at an all-time high under this administration. 7 million new jobs. Yesterday, the consumer confidence was the highest it's been for America in 20 years. The president has been doing all the right things for this country, but yet he is being impeached. You know, and your viewers do as well, this is something that started the night he was elected. Elizabeth Warren had a press conference in December of 2016 about how they were going to impeach President Trump. So now here we are in the trial, and they want to drag it on forever. They start by saying they have overwhelming evidence, a mountain of evidence, rock solid evidence, but yet they want more witnesses, more documents. So imagine, I think today in the Senate is going to be Groundhog's Day again. The same thing we heard yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Tomorrow the president's defense starts. We're also going to have time for senators to ask questions, and then we will ultimately make the decision, do we need even more information or do we have enough information to go to a final judgment?
So you will have a vote in terms of whether or not to bring witnesses in. You've got a 51 vote threshold here. Democratic senators need 4 Republican senators to vote with them to get witnesses. Do you see 4 votes on the Republican side to hear witnesses? That's going to be critical in terms of where this goes next, right?
It is going to be critical. And you're right, Maria, because it's interesting, because it sounds like every Democrat wants more witnesses. And it's not about more evidence. It's about dragging this on. It's about the 2020 election. You heard Adam Schiff say that the 2016 election wasn't a fair one, and he's saying the 2020 election can't be trusted. He thinks he ought to be the judge and the jury, and he ought to decide who should be president of the United States. I mean, it is astonishing that I would say let the voters decide. They're going to be voting starting next Monday in Iowa and New Hampshire the week after that. Let the voters decide. This shouldn't be up to 100 members of the United States Senate. I've heard enough. I think most Americans have heard enough. TV ratings are dropping. What we do see is that Americans believe that what's happening in the Senate is a fair trial, whereas what happened behind closed doors in the House and the president having no due process, only 1 in 3 Americans believe what happened in the House was fair.
Yeah, I know, but Senator, when I look at the jury, quote unquote jury, all of the senators, 4 of those senators want the president's job. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bennet. So how are they independent jurors? They're supposed to be jurors, but they're running for president. 2 other senators just dropped out, and they were also running for president. So you've got 6 senators who we know what their motives are. How is this a fair jury?
Well, they ought to recuse themselves. Some of our other Senate members have suggested that they remove themselves because many of the Democrats have already said they've made up their mind and they know how they're going to vote. Then they shouldn't need additional evidence to do it. The other thing, Maria, that many of us hadn't focused on is it's not just about removing President Trump from the White House. It is also about removing him from the ballot in 2020. So the Democrats who are bringing forth these articles of impeachment are also saying, don't let President Trump run for re-election in 2020. 2020 because they know there is a really good chance that the president will be reelected. When you look at what he's done, these recent trade agreements with Canada, with Mexico, with Japan, with China, the impact of this economy that is booming. Every day we spend, Maria, on impeachment. We're not spending on doing things to lower the cost of insulin for people who are diabetic. We're not spending our time on focused on the issue that I chair in the Senate, which is highways, roads, bridges, tunnels. All of those things need to be worked on. But as long as the Democrats continue to try to drag out this process, the longer it's going to take for us to get to the important work of the American people.
Yeah. Well, you're also not spending any time on the true wrongdoing that took place in 2016 and how his campaign was framed and spied on. We heard from the FISA judge today that 2 of the FISA warrants to surveil Carter Page were unlawful.
Yeah, that's getting worse.
No word
the
from your
more we hear
on the
about
left on that at all.
The more that, and a number of senators were talking about that new information. We were talking about that last night in the Senate floor. Real concern about the way and the abuses of then. The other issue that was interesting yesterday that came out, and the New York Times front page talks about it today, is the risky turn that the case has taken because they spent so much time yesterday talking about Joe and Hunter Biden. You know, the fact Hunter Biden's gotten all this money from Ukraine from a company that was under investigation for corruption. Joe Biden then has, had threatened to withhold $1 billion from Ukraine unless they fire the prosecutor who was looking into his son's behavior. And Maria, that was a lot more money than what President Trump had temporarily delayed. But that was forward. The money from President Trump that got paid. He got nothing as a result of it. Ukraine has done much better in terms of the weapons that they need and the funding that they need under President Trump than ever happened under the Biden-Obama administration.
All right, we will be watching certainly today, and then we will watch tomorrow, this weekend, when the president's defense team gets at the wheel. Senator, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.